Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a Ukraine war news update, first part thereof for the 24th of October 2025. We're going to start with the Ukrainian General Staff figures. As per normal, all the caveats apply. You can find them linked in the description below. So let's go there. And the figures look pretty standard, I guess, in terms of personnel losses being 910. That's below the 1,000 mark. We do have a single tank and 5 armored combat vehicles, as well as 34 artillery systems, typically fairly high there, 1 single multiple launch rocket system, 128 vehicles and fuel tanks, signifying I think the Russians are still attacking. In fact, we have seen some videos, I've seen some videos anyway, quite a few of various attacks along the front line. One from Seversk, coming out from Seversk, that I'm going to show you in a bit, which I would imagine is going to add to this list tomorrow, maybe. Some incredible footage from there. We'll go through that in a second, though. So, okay, now let's go to elements concerning personnel, as we normally do. Michael Weiss, the journalist, saying, important story in Le Monde, the French newspaper, highlighting a neglected aspect of the war. Russian conscripts, patriotic Ukrainians, patriotic Ukrainians living in the occupied territories to fight and die against their compatriots. Something I talked about a number of times earlier on in the war, that how horrible would it be to be one of these Ukrainians that is a pro-Ukrainian Ukrainian that had been caught up in occupied territories, and then you are forced to conscript into the Russian armed forces to fight against your fellow compatriots, doing something you really don't want to do. You're fighting over your own, and you are fighting for the enemy against your own side. It must be awful. Ceding land to Russia means consigning more Ukrainians to this grim fate and swelling the ranks of Russia's shrinking military. So the quote from the article: during his last mission on the front line in July, Dave had a strange encounter. The 30-year-old Ukrainian, who gave only his call sign, was on an operation in Mechivka in the Donbass when his unit managed to capture 4 Russian soldiers, 2 of whom turned out to be Ukrainians from the occupied territories, forced to obtain Russian passports. They had been conscripted into Moscow's army after the invasion on February the 24th, 2022, and then deployed to Ukraine. One of the 2, Sergei, 38, from Donetsk, said, why did you come to fight Ukraine? Dave asked him. I didn't. Oh, so that's what Dave said to the Ukrainian. I didn't want to, he answered. I waited a long time for you to come and liberate us, but in the end I was forced into it, the soldier replied. He told me he had no choice, that it was either that or death, said Dave, who had come to Kiev that October morning with his wife and daughter to pay his respects at the memorial for fallen soldiers. So, wow. Fascinating. Right, now we have a video I was going to show you yesterday, actually. This is, I just didn't have time, so I chose not to. This was a long line of Russian troops wearing these thermal cloaks that are supposed to disguise their thermal image. But of course, you know, yeah, okay, it's not showing the heat of your body, but then it's showing the cool of the cloak compared to the surrounding area, so you can still be fairly easily seen. Indeed, this whole group of soldiers is caught in what looks like a massive explosion, actually, considering it looks like this is an FPV drone that's hit them. That is a sizable FPV drone explosion. Okay, I am not going to show you this video. Oh, it's so annoying when it starts automatically, and I paused it. Anyway, this is a video of a small group of Russian soldiers sent on an assault run, and they pass countless dead comrades littering the front line. I mean, it is an incredible video to watch. I'd advise you watch it to get a sense of the context of this war, what's going on, how it looks, how it feels, what these soldiers are having to experience, and the sheer number of dead bodies lying around. Absolutely incredible. I mean, these Russian soldiers are walking past countless dead bodies, many of them just completely burnt out. I assume from being struck by individual FPV drones and then the bodies catching fire or something, but it's a horrible video, right, to watch. But sometimes I think to understand this war, you need to see things like this. And I'm going to invite you to watch another video, the Seversk one, in a minute. Well, I'm only going to show you a little bit from it. So anyway, that gives you a sense of the sheer number of casualties being taken here by the Russians. A Russian colonel has reportedly died of cardiac arrest after it was discovered during a rotation that he had been lying to his superiors about his division's control of territory in the Kherson region. Quite a bit being written about Kherson and videos from Kherson for a whole host of reasons today. We're going to focus to begin with on the false claims of taking land in Kherson, which hasn't been taken. And we'll start here with this Colonel Alexei Lenovich Pilsov, a call sign Ryazan. He was a commander of the Russian 70th Motor Rifle Division of the 18th Combined Arms Army. The division was located on the left bank of the Dnipro River from mid-2023 until October this year. So an over 2.5-2-year stint there. Pilsov is said to have reported to his superiors that most of the islands in the Kherson region were under Russian control. However, Ukrainian reports and independent assessments have consistently assigned the islands to be grey zone controlled by neither side. The Russians keep trying to cross the river and seize the islands, but have consistently been prevented from doing so by the Ukrainians, sustaining heavy casualties in the process. Conditions are said to be extreme, with cut-off Russian soldiers dying of starvation. We heard this recently about how soldiers on the islands would just, if they'd done some kind of mission onto one of the islands and then their boat gets blown up, you've got a squad of soldiers stuck on this island, and then it's too dangerous to go and sort them out. And so they then, in this small marshy area, have to survive over a long period of time, hoping that they're going to get rescued by their compatriots. But those boats are easy to spot and easy to blow up with the FPV drones, and so you have this situation where you've got Russian soldiers trapped on an island, literally starving to death. Now, shortly before Pilsov died on the night of 11th to 12th of October, his division was ordered to rotate to Chatsiv Yar in eastern Ukraine and be replaced by the 98th Guards Airborne Division, Military Unit 65451, under the command of Major General Ruslan Leontievich Yevdokimov. However, during the rotation, Kodimov is said to have discovered that Pilsov's reports were untrue and that most of the islands were still effectively under Ukrainian control. He reported this directly to Colonel General Mikhail Teplinsky, commander of the Dnipro group of forces, someone we've come across a number of times before. Yevdokimov reportedly refused to accept the positions he had inherited from Pilsov, leading to conflict between him and Teplinsky. In response, Teplinsky ordered Pilsov to establish control of the islands, but the 70th Division had already been redeployed by then. Reserve units are said to have been deployed to carry out Teplinsky's order. 144 separate Motor Rifle Brigade Stormtrooper Detachment with another Stormtrooper Detachment from 126 separate Coastal Defense Brigade on standby. Ironically, Pilsov is said to have discovered that Teplinsky's own units did not control territory around Chatsiv Yar that they had claimed, indicating that Teplinsky or his subordinates had likewise not been truthful about their achievements. Pilsov's health was deteriorating before his death, according to his wife. He sustained a serious injury in 2022, which led to partial amputation of his feet. And that meant that he had to constantly take blood thinners. He was in training for a promotion to a general officer rank. Russia has had consistent problems throughout the war in Ukraine with its army commanders lying about their military successes. They have a financial motive to do so, and they can look forward to awards and cash bonuses for capturing targets. And then I think we can leave that probably there. Oh, no, it finishes here. So, however, this has frequently caused excessive casualties as Russian troops are sent unprepared into Ukrainian strongholds, which have been falsely claimed as captured, creating vulnerabilities for other Russian units as well. Okay, so given that, it's interesting then to look at this article in Euromaidan Press talking about what the ISW, Institute for the Study of War, has themselves reported. ISW says Russia fakes battlefield gains in Kherson city to convince the West it's winning the war, but Ukrainian troops filmed strolling there the next day. So Russian installed Kherson occupation head Vladimir Saldo published footage on the 22nd of October showing a Russian soldier raising a flag in Karantini Island on the 5th Salishi Microrayon, so small region, small district in southwestern Kherson city. Saldo claimed Russian reconnaissance and airborne units had crossed the Dnipro River, repelled Ukrainian counterattacks, secured a bridgehead, mined access routes, and begun organizing logistics for a sustained presence. Some Russian mill bloggers echoed Saldo's narrative, crediting drone operators of the 31st VDV Brigade and with establishing air superiority and artillery units of the 18th Combined Arms Army, with striking Ukrainian targets on the island and nearby bridges. One mill blogger also alleged Russian sabotage groups were preparing to hunt Ukrainian forces in the Korabelny microrayon on the northeastern part of the island. Okay, sort of thing that you would imagine when I do my mapping, Syriac maps would say, yep, this is controlled by the Russians. But on 23rd of October, Ukrainian Brigade released a geolocated video showing its troops moving freely through Ostriv microrayon, part of the Karantini Island, directly contradicting Russian claims of the active military presence. The brigade stated that Karantini Island, as well as the area of Antonivka and Sadova east of Kherson city, remained silent, with no sign of Russian forces on the west bank of the Dnipro River. A Russian mill blogger focused on the Kherson front had claimed Russian troops had pushed Ukrainian forces out of Sadove and conducted sabotage near Antonivka. ISW assessed that no available evidence supports these assertions. According to the ISW, this information operation fits within a larger pattern. The Kremlin wants to project inevitability of victory in to the European Union, the US, and Ukraine itself, encouraging submission to Moscow's demands and eroding foreign support for Ukraine. The ISW notes that the narrative undermines Russia's own occasional signals of willingness to negotiate territorial matters in southern Ukraine. So there is basically an awful lot of psyops warfare going on. We know that the Russians claim that they control land that they simply do not. And yeah, that continues. Now, here in the Zaporizhia direction, another unsuccessful assault by the enemy. Currently, the activity of assaults involving equipment is increasing. So this is kind of our way into talking about equipment losses. There are increasing numbers of attacks using mechanized equipment. We've seen that over the last 2 weeks, really. Sometimes fairly sizable columns of equipment have been used and thus indeed lost. But the Russians do have a habit of using like quite a lot of equipment and personnel and relying on just a few of them getting to the desired location and offloading, and then that can be enough. Now, what we're going to see are pieces of kit that are fit for Mad Max films, and lots of them. So here we have the 24th Mechanized Brigade repelling a Russian mechanized assault in Chaziv Yar. Russians lost 1 MTLB, a BMP, 2 quad bikes, and 3 motorcycles during the failed attack. So here you have, okay, you've got 2 combat assets, traditional ones, an MTLB, that's an old school APC, and a BMP-1, really old BMP. You've got 2 quad bikes and 3 motorcycles. So 5 out of the 7 vehicles are unarmored vehicles that we're seeing more and more of in their attacks. Now, this is the video I want you to go and watch, linked here below. It's a Null Reports video. Ukrainian soldiers of the Apache Battalion, the 81st Air Assault Brigade, released footage of repelling a major Russian assault. And I'm actually going to start it playing without the music, of course. A major Russian assault near Serebryanka and Siversk. The attack involved infantry, motorcycles, and heavy armor, including the so-called Blyat-Barn, a tank destroyed after multiple FPV drone strikes. Okay, so we're going to go from what looks like, I was trying to work out whether these infantry or motorcycles, the footage is sped up there. You get, I mean, this, I was speaking to Pierre about this area. This is Siversk area, which is south of Serebryansky Forest or around that area. It's very hilly, got lots of gullies. It's quite difficult terrain, probably quite good terrain to defend. Now, you then have, after lots of sort of what looked like maybe motorcycle attacks and infantry attacks and picking them off, you have this column, I say column, about, is it 4 of these Mad Max style vehicles. Look at how honestly well defended these vehicles are. And you understand how well defended they are because it takes an inordinate amount of FPV drones to take these things out. Mines are also exploding occasionally, but these look like, I don't know if they're mines or FPV, that they look like mines actually. But this front vehicle, I think, has a mine roller as well. And it has a turret that is working, which is very rare. You quite often see them built around the turrets, these defenses. But this vehicle is just happily going through mine after mine after mine, and then getting FPV drone hit it time and time again. What I want to know is, so sometimes the claims are that this takes like 25 hits before it's taken out. I don't know. I'd have to go back and count up. They certainly aren't all drones, but there is a lot of resilience to these vehicles, and it takes a lot to take them out. I want to know how many drone teams are working on a sector like this. So, right, we're being attacked. There are 4 vehicles coming at us. How many drone pilots are sending drones? How quickly does it take you to move from one drone to the next? So you fly in a drone to here, right? Then you've got to get another drone to attack that. If you're the same pilot, how far away from the vehicle are you? How long does it take you to get your drone in the air? Do you have to put a munition on it straight away? Is it ready with the munition? How long do you have to faff around with it before you get it in the air? How long does it take to get from where you are to here? And then you hit that. Okay, then you've got to rinse and repeat. Well, if you've only got one drone team, then it's going to take you getting 15 drones up to begin to think about knocking this vehicle out. So you can see, I think, the roll on the front there, and it has you can see the drone going in there, and it has a barrel that was firing there. So anyway, how many teams are working so that you can repeatedly hit vehicles like this with drones? Just one drone team is clearly not going to be enough. But you've also got mines, it appears, around here. And I don't know what ends up immobilizing this vehicle, whether it's a mine or a drone. But it is a case of needing lots of all of the above. But also, I would like to see artillery working here. I don't think artillery is working in this particular video. I'm going to pause it there. Sorry that played the music, because these guys get hammered then by FPV drones. But just the sheer number of drones to take out these vehicles, you might laugh at what these vehicles look like, but the protection is there for a reason, right? It's because it has function. They're not going to waste their time doing this if it had no functional value. It has functional value, and it means that, okay, drones are cheap, $300 to $400, but if you're using 15 drones to hit this vehicle and take it out, then you're starting to think, well, is it worth hitting it with artillery instead? Even though artillery shells are more expensive, they're going to do more kinetic damage. There's a lot more of an impact there. But then actually, if these vehicles are moving, how many artillery rounds is it going to take to hit this vehicle? So, you're playing around with all these cost benefit analyses, but it's just an incredible video, I think, showing just how many drones and mines these vehicles can withstand when the wind is going in their direction, when things are lucky for them, if you like. I think this vehicle had a mine roller that was certainly helping it negotiate some of those mines. But that works only for so long. And in fact, I think you saw the vehicle going backwards towards the end, just in this point. I think it's just before that point. You can see it firing its barrel there. Then again, in this point, it's the barrel is pointing backwards. Quite often you see that with Leopard 2 tanks, quite often driving backwards when not driving backwards, driving forward, but the turret is pointing backwards for various reasons. So I don't know if that's what was going on there. Who knows? Anyway, we're now going to look at another video. This is a drone that hits a Ukrainian soldier here, and he is, so you can see the drone come in from the left. Let's rewind it. The drone comes in from the left. A guy on the left throws himself to the floor because he knows what's going to happen. So the drone is coming in. You've got 2 guys sitting on the front. This guy on the left runs off here, sees the drone coming, and throws himself to the floor. This guy then, a little bit later, throws himself to the right and gets hit on the back by the drone. He's trying to shoot it. He's trying to shoot it with small arms and gives up. And then the drone hits him on the back. My goodness, it doesn't explode. This guy has to be thanking his lucky stars. The universe has worked in his favor. Quite an incredible video there. Okay. During the liberation and clearing of a settlement in Kucherev Yar in the Dobropilly direction. So this is where Ukrainians took 50 prisoners just yesterday, a day before, and they are now clearing out Kucherev Yar. It turns out that Ukrainian paratroopers managed to find and evacuate 10 local civilians to a safe place. So these people have been stuck in an encircled area, living still in their huts or whatever, in their houses, for what's probably almost 2 months now, surviving on goodness knows what, as the Russians were surrounded and as fighting was taking place, bleeding everywhere here. So you've got all these people with their dogs and whatnot saying, "Get me out of Dodge." That must have been a hellish experience. Right, we're now going to go on to look at footage from a Russian FPV drone here. And then this is a whole set of war crimes that are caught on camera, all within the last 24 hours. Footage from a Russian FPV drone intercepted by Ukraine's Azov brigade shows a war crime against civilians in Donetsk. The Russian drone operator hunts unarmed farmers and appears to enjoy the chase. He targets and strikes a truck transporting grain. I mean, this is just horrific. And eventually goes for the grain truck. But you're thinking, you know, how often do these guys go for unarmed farmers as well? Just anyway, the chasing all around, chasing those innocent farmers, if you like, all around. Then we hear, and Pierre pointed this picture out to me. These are people local to where he is set up in Kramatorsk, or has been set up. I don't think he's in Ukraine at the moment. A Russian drone struck a civilian vehicle in Kramatorsk on the 23rd of October, killing 2 Ukrainian journalists in what officials call a deliberate attack on the press. So really sad news that a vehicle was blown up with 2 Ukrainian journalists inside. There are other claims that this was right next to a petrol station, and it was a petrol station they might have been going for, but they've certainly just hit a car with 2 non-army personnel in them, in it. So yeah, that's an absolute shocker. And then more, the number of injured has risen to 14 following a Russian MLRS, a multiple launch rocket strike on Kherson's Korabelny district this morning, according to local authorities. This is quite possibly the area we were talking about just in a previous post about how the Russians are trying to take this area because they previously thought they had it. Previously, Russians claimed to have to control over this area, which was quickly refuted by local authorities and Ukrainian forces. Well, now the Russians are going at it hammer and tongs. And indeed, here you see MLRS shelling of residential districts. I mean, this is just war crime. Again, Russia is shelling residential areas of Kherson with MLRS, killing 3 and injuring 14, and launched 4 consecutive guided bomb strikes on 1 district in Kharkiv as well. So we've got Kharkiv, and I don't know if that's Kharkiv or Kherson, but both places are under attack. Civilians getting targeted, it appears, and the Russians not caring one jot for adhering to international conventions. At least 5 civilians have been shot dead by Russians in the village of Zvanivka in the Donetsk region. They shot people with automatic weapons directly into the basement where civilians were hiding from shelling. However, the crime of the occupiers was told by a 57-year-old woman who survived despite a bullet wound. The Russians killed her husband, 2 sons, and a neighbor with a child. She independently reached the territory controlled by Ukraine and was hospitalized. And that is absolutely horrific. Again, just stories like this every single day coming out from this war. None of it making the Russians look good. Russians, again, attacked Ukrainian firefighters in the Orikhiv direction over the last 24 hours. An FPV drone hit a fire truck just after crews extinguished a blaze. The National Police reports 1 rescuer suffered a shoulder wound and blast trauma. The others were not injured. But this is just horrendous. I cannot believe that they are doing this time and time again. It looks like that one was presented to the Ukrainians probably by Germans there. It looks like that was a German fire truck at one point. Now, then we're going to go to some kind of sabotage operation, it appears. This is in Stavropol in Russia. I can't make out too much from this video. I'm not going to play the sound to you, but it's essentially a video from Stavropol in Russia. So, you know, well away from the front lines. It's in Russian, and there aren't subtitles, at least not from any I've seen concerning this, and I don't quite know what happened here, but it appears that the GUR are, with the support of the Caucasus Liberation Movement, eliminated at least 3 servicemen from the 247th Caucasian Cossack Regiment of the Airborne Forces. So that is 3 Russian paratroopers have been taken out well behind inside Russia here. I don't know whether it's car bombs, whether they were shot, or who knows. But anyway, that is something that has happened. Right, we're going to move on to distance strikes now and talk through what has been happening overnight in both Ukraine and Russia. Ukrainian air defense shot down or suppressed actually a very low percentage of drones. 128 drones sent in, 72 taken out. So 72 out of 100 would be 72%. So this is well below that. I mean, this is looking probably like around 60%. It's not a good interception rate at all. That is what, 72 out of 128. So you've got 28 plus 28. So that's 56 drones getting through. Wow, 56 drones. Imagine just 56 drones going to Russia. None of them getting sent down. 56 drones shot down. 56 drones. How much damage can 56 drones do? Now, what is worrying for me is that I have no real news of drones striking Ukraine at the moment. That might come out. I'll have a look. I'm just looking right now as I speak to you to see if there are any discussions about this. No, there's a lot of talk about Kherson getting hit with an MLRS. Assaults in Chasiv again, same kind of footage. Yeah. Okay, we'll have a look in a wee while, but I don't think there is any news at the moment of strikes on Ukraine. Other than what I've already told you and what's happening in Kharkiv with regard to guided glide bombs. Tim White here says, sadly, I need to start another daylight start his daily thread with another daylight attack injuring civilians in Kharkiv. At least 3 injuries are known, but people may still be under the rubble after a succession of aerial bombs pounded the city. 4 aerial bombs struck Kharkiv this morning. A civilian business building was hit, and rescuers are on site with fears they may find more wounded. Cars at the site have also been damaged. 1 Russian bomb hit a car depot with over 20 vehicles damaged. A second aerial bomb hit the civilian business. 1 of 3 injured is in hospital. More scheduled power cuts across Ukraine today. Russia hit energy targets again overnight. Facilities were struck in Kirovohrad, as well as Dnipropetrovsk and Sumy regions. The energy ministry says that the situation in Chernihiv region remains very difficult. So obviously things have been hit there, but we have no imagery coming out. Heavy attack this morning too. So 19 people injured in Kherson, and that's the MLRS video that I've already showed you. What else? Russia has already proudly shown their crimes in Kherson. A couple of days ago, they claimed to have captured the Delta Ostriv area here and have tried to cut off Korabel 2. These are the areas being pounded here. Not even a pretense that they're avoiding civilians. And a few minutes ago in Kherson, again, an FPV drone hit another high-rise in Korabel. 20 minutes before that in Dnipro district, another tower block was hit. During the night of the same part of Kherson, a Russian Shahed drone injured 2 here. So, yeah, it seems to be a case of aiming for Kherson and Kharkiv and not caring one iota for civilians. Now, having said that, Ukraine appears to have hit a residential building in Moscow, though this is thought to be electronic warfare, taking a long-range drone off course. Russia claims to have allegedly downed 130 Ukrainian drones overnight. I find this odd that I am not seeing any footage of either Ukrainian successes or Russian successes overnight, although both sides have thrown in fairly similar numbers of drones. A lot of drones were sent. And, well, Russia claims to have downed 130 Ukrainian drones. Footage shows the result of a Russian electronic warfare system operating in the Moscow region and sending 1 drone into the side of an apartment block. Russian air defenses have been active in Moscow's Oblast in the Ramanskoye region. The town is home to Zhukovsky Air Base and of the Gromov Flight Research Institute. So I don't know what's been going on there, but activity possibly around a Russian airbase near Moscow. Yeah, as we heard, drone attack damages a residential building in Moscow overnight. And that's all I have really. So I'm going to go back to the night before when Ukraine hit Kopeisk right back in Chelyabinsk and destroyed at least part of a munitions factory. What imagery is confirmed, one of the ammunition workshops in Kopeisk was partially destroyed. The presence of blast deflectors and lightning rods indicate it was used for production and filling of shells. The plant modernized and expanded since 2023, manufactures artillery, mortar, tank rounds, and rockets. That was what it looked like 2 nights ago. A big explosion that was caught on dash cams or on phones from cars as they went past. And this appears to be the site of quite a bit of destruction. Indeed, oh no, we are going to come to that. This is going to be the next one. Yeah, here it is. So damage to Russia's Plastmass military plant in Kopeisk after a 22nd of October explosion. According to the latest information, 12 people there were killed, 10 remain missing. Authorities deny it was caused by a drone strike, though. A criminal case has been opened over safety violations, resulting in multiple deaths. I mean, it could have been. Could well have been, because we've seen a number of these events take place where explosions have happened. In fact, as one site fairly recently had its second explosion. The previous one was just before the war started. So, we know that, well, we can guess that probably wasn't anything to do with the drone strike. So anyway, this is what took place in Chelyabinsk. It is, as you can see, fairly destroyed, at least in part. Then we're going to go to Krasnogorsk in the Moscow region. A drone flew through into an apartment due to electronic warfare. Oh no, that was from earlier. So that was the apartment from the inside. Anyway, we'll then move on to this, which is not so much the war in Ukraine, but the war as it expands into Europe. Lithuania has just expanded military authority to shoot down hostile drones within 10 kilometers of the Belarus border, or after a Russian Gerber drone violated airspace in August 2025. A new law allows military to neutralize threats in restricted zones under absolute military necessity. So the Lithuanian armed forces changing their regulation over shooting down drones. Okay, then we're going to go on to other bits and pieces. So we're on to our third section of this video, and we are going to start with Anton Gerashenko saying the Russian landing ship Alexander Shabalin has been anchored at the entrance to Lübeck Bay near the coast of northern Germany for days, Kieler Nachrichten has reported. The 112-meter-long vessel, followed by the Federal Police and the Navy, arrived there on October the 19th. That looks all rather suspicious, given the amount of activity in terms of drones over recent weeks and months. And to add to this, 2 Russian aircraft, a Su-30 and an Il-78, violated Lithuanian airspace from the Kaliningrad region, flying about 700 meters deep for 18 seconds. NATO Typhoons from Spain were scrambled in response and are now patrolling the area. President Nauseda called it a blatant breach of sovereignty. I mean, the question is, what do you do with Russian planes that just hop into your airspace for sort of 18 seconds? Is that enough to shoot them down? What would Russia's response be if that was the case? Now, we're going to go on to the Russian economy. Quote from some economists here. 13 out of 20 industries are in a sustained, physically observable negative. The situation shows a trend towards deterioration. So Russian economists say that the problems in the Russian economy are getting worse. A large number of enterprises are facing difficulties, moving from slight profitability into tangible losses, says one of these guys. Something needs to be done about this. If our wonderful machine builders are massively switching to a 4-day work week, he says, and even considering a 3-day week, this is no longer funny. That's if we talk about a major industry. Any insinuations that they are somehow inefficient or uncompetitive look, frankly speaking, quite bad, to put it mildly. So there you go. It's not looking good in Russia. He says, because if an entire industry or enterprises across several industries end up in this red zone, the problem clearly isn't with the enterprises. Okay, to kind of add to that, in fact, if we go here first, this is sort of, I think it explains one of the problems going on in Russia at the moment is they keep wanting to put up taxes. They are changing tax regulation to do with the VAT, so that you pay VAT when you're earning less now than you were previously, and taxes appear to be, there's a lot of pressure to put taxes up. Now, economists are warning that Russia is entering a tax trap. So to make up for the rapidly decreasing oil revenue, so we're not making, our budget's looking bad, we are not making the income that we were, and oil revenues are right down. So how do we deal with this? Well, we put taxes up. We need to increase our income in another way if it is decreasing over there. The Kremlin is increasing taxes on Russians, but this causes less spending, which in turn causes a drop in tax revenue. So basically with tax, there's an optimum, isn't there? And you hope to find that as a government, which is that we need to make the most in tax revenue. If we lower taxes, then you might think we're going to make less money, but actually it motivates people to go out and spend more. Oh, I'm getting taxed less, so I've got more money in my pocket. So they go and spend more. And then even though you're taxing everyone less, if they're spending more, you're actually getting a net positive there, getting more tax income in, because less on more, the less is trumped by the more. But if likewise, you can raise taxes, get more income in from raising taxes. But then if that stops because people have less money in their pocket, stops them going out and buying stuff, then, that mitigates the raising of the taxes. So there are all these mitigating factors to either lowering taxes or raising taxes. And you've got to find that perfect spot where you get the optimal amount of income for the tax that you've put on. Now, Russia appears to be kind of ignoring the optimum here, because they see themselves as having no choice but to increase taxes because their budget is looking desperate. But this will, like officious tax regimes, will negatively influence the consumers. They will not go out and spend. To make up for rapidly decreasing oil revenue, the Kremlin is increasing taxes on Russians, but this causes less spending, dropping tax revenue, and that causes tax increases to compensate, and GDP negatively grows quickly. In other words, fewer people are going out buying stuff, which means you're not producing as much stuff, which means your GDP goes down, your tax goes up, your GDP goes down, your spending goes down. And this is a spiral that Russia appears to be involved in at the moment. Now, Timothy Milovanov, who is from the Kiev School of Economics, says the Kremlin's war economy is draining the provinces. Russia's regional budgets are collapsing. 6 regions are down to less than 1% of annual funds, which will only last for 2 days of spending. Dozens more are sinking into deficit, according to the Moscow Times. By September, 6 Russian regions have burned nearly all their cash, having reserves of less than 1% of their annual budget. Arkhangelsk, 50 million rubles, 0.03%. Kalmykia, 0.1%, Volgograd 0.04%, Belgorod 0.1%. 67 out of 89 regions are now in deficit. Revenues have fallen in real terms in over half the country, and the total regional shortfalls nearing 725 billion rubles by autumn. Irkutsk cut 4.9 billion rubles from education and health spending, while Yaroslavl, Ulyanovsk, and Dagestan are preparing tax increases to cover gaps. As we just mentioned, that's a problem. Several others plan higher transport taxes. Economist Natalia Zubarevich warns that the crisis will deepen by year's end as December spending surges. Regional outlays expected to exceed revenues by another 370 billion rubles. It's not looking good. From every single angle, the Russian economy is in trouble. Okay, changing topic. Female spies from China and Russia are waging a sex warfare to steal Silicon Valley secrets. Beijing and Moscow are sending attractive women to seduce employees of technology companies, according to the Times. The goal is to close the technological gap with the United States, create their own developments, and strengthen the economic and military power of China and Russia. Remember, we arrested 3 more Russian spies yesterday, or proxies, in the UK. That happened in London, I believe. There's also the Chinese spy case that fell through because it was wrongly prosecuted. Hopefully, they're going to pick that up again and prosecute it under the 2023 legislation in the UK, which means it will go through in a Crown prosecution service should have enough to do them, and it won't be politically difficult, because in the UK, under the Official Secrets Act of 1911, you basically have to state that China is the enemy of the UK, and no one wants to do that because we're still working quite closely economically with China. So yeah, the Official Secrets Act was a wrong legislation to prosecute those two, which the previous government did, and so it all fell through. Okay, Putin. This called in. Well, Anton Gerashenko reports this. So Putin. In fact, let's play this to you. I think it's worth listening to.
Thank you. President Putin basically said today that Russia is immune from U.S. sanctions. He said that it would not impact the Russian economy in any serious way. Is he wrong?
I'm glad he feels that way. That's good. I'll let you know about it in 6 months from now. Okay, let's see how it all works out.
I quite like this from Trump. He's like, nah, okay. If that's what Putin says, nah, get back to me in 6 months, see how it goes. Now, what's important about this is he used the term 6 months. So the worry about these sanctions is that it'd only be on for a week or so, firing a shot across the Russian bow here. But if he's saying, yeah, get back to me in six months, then there is at least this kind of default idea in his head that these are going to be at least somewhat long term. And that's what is needed. So, yeah, could be good stuff there from Trump, really, and the Trump administration. Okay. Zelensky went to the EU yesterday and met with all these leaders. I love this. I love that everyone stood up. Everyone rose for Zelensky one by one. Not applause, respect. Everyone knows who's fighting for its and his freedom, or his country's freedom. This is great. Absolutely brilliant. People respect him in the EU, and that's really, really good. Okay. Now, today, Zelensky's meeting with Starmer in the UK and the coalition of the willing. I've heard them be called the coalition of the determined. I quite like that. It's not about being willing, it's about being determined, willing and determined. Ahead of today's coalition of the willing meeting in London, UK, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and this is big news, right? This is exactly what I want to hear from Keir Starmer, and I'm excited by this. I will be happy if there's actual tangible outcomes from this coalition of the willing meeting. But Starmer is saying exactly what I've been saying for ages, which is long-range weapons, missiles, like alternatives to the Flamingo, like Storm Shadows and Scalp-PGs and Taurus and Tomahawks. That's what they need. So Keir Starmer has urged allies to boost deliveries of long-range weapons to Ukraine before winter. London also backs a global ban on Russian oil and gas, using frozen Russian assets to aid Ukraine and ramping up military support, says Nell reports. That's excellent stuff. So credit where credit's due. And then just trying to see if there is anything else that is developing at the moment. Yeah, I don't know that there's any particular news of any other attacks going on. Yeah, I don't think we've seeing anything new. So this is quite weird for me. Is that he's also meeting the king of Zelensky there? It's weird for me that we are just not seeing any evidence of the Russian strikes and any evidence of Ukrainian strikes overnight, and there were quite a lot of them. So that is, I don't think, probably good news either way, really. Like when I don't see the successful Russian strikes, knowing that they are successful, we know that there's 56 were shot down. I always think the worst there, that Ukraine is going to be suffering. Russia will have hit their energy infrastructure, and we are getting indications of that has happened up in Chernihiv and other such regions. And yet we're not seeing any evidence of the Ukrainian strikes, and we usually do. So that worries me that Russia might have had a better night, but who knows? That's just pure speculation. Anyway, let me know what you think. Take care, and I will speak to you soon.